Hello and welcome back to OT the podcast. We are here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I am Andy Green.
I'm Felix Schultz.
Felix, this week has been an interesting one. We've had to break away from the regular programming to fit some, breaking news.
Late-breaking announcements.
Yeah, as of a few hours ago, earlier this morning. So yes, as the title gives away, some new Rolexes, 2020 models.
Yeah, we'll talk about those in a little bit of detail in a few minutes, but we've got someone else that we're chatting to after Rolex talk.
We have a very, very special and interesting guest, founder of Iris Listenwell and a few of those other businesses, but his name is Jacobi Anstruther, and he is a very cool guy. We've obviously recorded this a little bit earlier, and he is super fascinating. Like, I wasn't expecting the chat to go the way that it did.
Yeah, like I'm not a sound guy, but I think I'm a little bit more of a sound guy having chatted to him. It's a whole new world, Andy.
Yeah, just and really engaging, really interesting. Before we do that, we'll chat new Rolex. But
there's something
before
else.
we do that, there's a few
The
things.
the hottest release of 2020.
Yeah, we
What is
have
it, Andy?
merch. We have merch. We have OT the podcast decals, stickers, call them what you will, available on our website, which we link up every week.
Yep.
We have done stickers for flippers. It's been kicking around for a while. It's our brainchild. We've got them in two sizes, 9 centimeters and 7.5 centimeters. So I think car, windshield, and laptop is probably
I've got mine
ideal.
on my laptop.
I've got them honestly everywhere, and sort of all the cars up the street have them now as well. Just sort of
it's part of the marketing campaign.
Plugging. Yeah, you'll now be able to find where I live. So they're available.
Quick question, Andy. What is stickers for flippers? What do we need to say what it's about?
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a meta in joke that we'd had kicking around. Basically, it's that concept, and I guess it's kind of fitting given the subject that we're going to get into. But it's sort of that idea of leaving the stickers on your watch is a bit of an indicator that you might be looking to flip it on.
Yeah, so it's not just for, and it's often those hotly in demand sort of models that you leave those stickers on.
Hypey.
And of course, the sticker features another sort of flipper, one of our favourite dolphins.
It does.
It's a little
flipper.
It's a play on words, Andy. I thought we're pretty proud of ourselves.
It is.
With this
one. There's layers upon layers, and the fact that it is a sticker in itself is even more special. It's got flipper kind of bursting out of the ocean. We've kind of gone for I think Felix wanted a Miami sunset.
Was my brief to the designer.
Guys, let us know. Felix is great with briefs, but these are available. It's a good way to kind of support the show, and of course, we've actually had them made here in Melbourne. I should mention by our friends over at Auto Religion. So we'll link up Auto Religion. They do a bunch of cool kind of more car related stuff, t-shirts, prints, decals for your vintage cars. Very, very cool guys. So thank you to those guys for hooking us up.
So if you want to support us, you can get stickers for flippers. If you want to support the flipper in your life, you can get them a sticker, or the dolphins. Maybe don't put the stickers on dolphins though. That's probably not cool. We didn't test the adhesive for animal safety, so don't do that.
We're gonna have Peter coming after us after that comment, Felix. So we might have to cut that. Anyway, whilst you haven't bought any stickers yet, we do have to take a real ad break. So we'll be back in a moment to talk new Rolex. Today's episode of OT the podcast is brought to you by William Wood Watches.
William Wood, they're a smaller independent brand. They're based out of the United Kingdom, and they've been around for a few years now.
What sets William Wood apart is their design ties to the firefighting service stemming from the founder's connection.
So, they're named after William Wood, who's the founder's grandfather, and he was a legit firefighter with a bunch of accolades. The watches incorporate a range of nice firefighting touches.
Like their logo, which is an old-style firefighter's helmet, but the really cool part, the straps seen on their Valiant collection, which are made of upcycled British fire hoses.
Something really interesting is the crown, which has been made from a London Fire Brigade brass helmet from the 1920s.
The Valiant collection is their divers range, water resistant up to 100 metres and powered by your choice of either a Swiss or a Japanese movement. Now, those straps I mentioned.
Yeah, aside from being sustainable, they are indeed upcycled from fire hoses that would otherwise have been tossed aside.
Super cool, and we've actually been wearing a piece from the collection. I've been wearing the red watch, which comes on a matching red rubber strap.
Well, I've been going for the Rose Watch with a pop and yellow rubber strap. It's a classic dive style with a nice sandwich dial and some nice, good two-tone elements going on. How are you liking that strap, Andy?
What surprised me is the unique details, which makes sense as every strap is slightly different and it makes it feel a little bit more special. It also has retained a smokiness to it, which is pretty cool.
The straps are also really comfortable. I can see them working on a bunch of watches, and you can buy them separately.
Speaking of, the Valiant collection features a quick change spring bar on both rubber straps and the bracelet. How good.
It makes changing those straps absolutely easy.
And I should mention the military fire hose strap, which comes in a khaki esque green, right up my alley.
Did you see they've also done a bronze edition that'll be ready early 2021?
Sure did, and it's the sort of watch that's going to look really cool worn in and patinaed up.
Now, time for something more serious.
Yes, William Wood caught our attention earlier this year when they donated a watch in support of the Australian bushfires, and that individual piece raised 4,800 US dollars.
Being based in Melbourne, that's a pretty important cause for us and for William Wood. That amount is much more than the retail price of a William Wood Valiant.
Yes, a new one is priced between 695 and 995 Great British pounds, which is roughly 1,500 to 2,000 Aussie dollars, depending on which movement you go with.
And how many extra straps do you get with it?
If you're in the market for a new diver, check out William Wood Watches, who are upcycling service materials for a new life on wrist. Once forgotten, now reborn.
When you buy a William Wood watch, you're not just buying a great watch, you're also giving back to firefighting communities that really need our support now more than ever. This year so far, they've raised over 10,000 USD for international firefighting charities. And they also donate to firefighting charities in the UK with every sale.
For more information or to purchase one of their timepieces or unique straps, visit williamwoodwatches.com.
Andy, I think new Rolex watches, they're a pretty amazing thing. Like there's some sort of excitement around them that I think transcends usual watch nerdery. Like, I've had people,
It's a phenomenon.
yeah, they've been like sending me the teasers, like going, "Hey Felix, do you know what the new Rolex model is? Do you know what's coming?" It's amazing in terms of looking at the marketing.
Weeks, if not
Weeks.
months. The
Wow,
moment
a
that there
bit
was
different. Yeah, when did we get a whisper that they were going to be doing something?
September, I think it's like probably 6 weeks ago now. It was sort of there was an inkling.
So
I
it's
think
coming. So
retailers
it's
maybe
coming.
were talking about it. There was like I was hearing down to like overseas retailers changing their displays, and they're like, oh, when the display changes, this means that, and this means this, and yeah, same as you. It's kind of like the amount of DMs of like in the lead up to this. Do you know what the new release is? And I just said the same response every single time, and it was if I knew, I couldn't tell you.
Rainbow,
And you know
Rainbow
that if I
Yacht Master
no, no, no,
Two.
let me go, let
That
me
was
go.
my go-to
Oh, no, no,
response.
no, no. I said if I did know what it was, then you know that I couldn't tell you, and what I did tell you wouldn't be what I know. And then people just kind of go, "Yeah, yeah, it
Whoa.
was super meta," which is also true. Like, who knows? Who knows what embargoes we have or have not signed? I cannot comment either way.
Sure, sure, sure,
Um,
sure. Do you
as
know
we
what
know,
the most? The news dropped this morning, Aussie time.
it did.
Do you know what the most amazing thing you do actually? Because you sent me the screenshot.
Mm.
It broke Kadinky.
It actually broke Hodinky. So they did their Instagram post of here's the side by side of the old and the new Submariner,
Yeah,
and I went to go have a look at it, and the website was down, and I've gone, "This is it. You've broken the watch internet." Of
you've
course,
Ben
since
Climbers
then,
there, just looking broken,
hit and refresh, not
guys.
which
Buy more servers.
this is yeah,
But that's
which is fascinating because it's like, okay, you've read the news there. Do you then continue on and read? Because we obviously come from that background of like covering this big stuff, and I think I
yeah.
shared a few of the watches to Instagram. But by like 10 a.m. today, I was well and truly over it. Like I was just like, I can't keep getting
And
asked these
it's
questions.
also I think it's also fascinating because it wasn't like there were some surprises in there. We'll get to that in a second, but also there was a bit of there was some stuff we had already seen, like a few of the sort of more well known
Yes, leaks.
inside Instagram accounts had pretty what turned out to be quite accurate
Yeah,
renders and
Rolex Passion Report. Obviously, it's always fascinating because it starts off as like, oh, we've got these predictions, and then with any brand, it firms up with like a document taken on some like a photo of a PDF taken on someone's phone, sent
mm,
via DM, screenshotted, and you're kind of like, it's gone through like 4 layers now that it could be real because who would go to that effort? But like seeing even yesterday before the release, seeing people like match the fonts up to try and work out if it was real because if the font
And there's all that stuff
matched.
about, the they don't use the number 11 on the date windows. It was interesting.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so
What do you think though about that leaky stuff? Do you think it? Obviously, it's not great from a brand point of view. Like they've worked really hard to have this big moment, and that sort of takes some of the thunder away. For you, does it make you more excited, less excited, frustrated? How do you feel about them?
I I think I prefer like the speculation of like what they could do. I like the the idea of like someone, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the Ceramic Explorer 2, something like that, the Ceramic Bezel
Yeah,
Explorer 2, something like that excites me more than getting to know because then you kind of make up your mind over like a really small piece of information without
yeah,
seeing the full picture. And like we try to do that to each other. Oh, well, what could it be? What could it be? It's like we don't know, and it's so hard to like get the full picture. You don't know what it means, and I think for this one, it was everyone was just saying the Hulk, and like they say the Hulk for the last 3 or 4 years. It's been
yeah.
this is gonna be
Sure.
it's due for a discontinue, and sure enough, this was the year technically it stopped. But what I found really interesting there was people were just so honed in on one model within one
That one
collection
sports model.
that they kind of it's gonna be discontinued. You're kind of thinking, well, why would they just do that? Why wouldn't they do like an update to all the
Yeah.
models? Like they're not going to just update one model. So then that update means they might update the whole collection. Now, what would that whole collection being updated look like? Gee, this is an interesting
Mm.
thought to get down. And it's just,
I,
yeah, people get very sort of narrow with their focus.
I've got two things, and I understand the narrow focus because that's where certainly that collector thing. It's
Oh, to be
really
fair, also like
hyper
just
focused. Yeah,
to say, like when you get like a snippet of something and that's all you have to go by, and like we
yeah.
go down these rabbit holes, like it's totally normal. I just find that in itself fascinating.
So two things for me, Andy.
Yes.
One, it reminds me the thing about finding out beforehand. It reminds me about Christmas presents when I was a kid.
Hmm.
I love the speculation. Like, am I getting this? I love the hope and the dream of am I getting a new remote control car?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
Yes.
guess in retrospect, I also sort of love the disappointment of not getting a remote control car, and like
Like
it's
peeling
that
back the wrapper, or like
yeah,
the Christmas wrapping, and then kind of like sticking it back or flipping the box upside down so that the the
yeah. I
tear's
mean,
covered.
that's sort of how I equate that feeling to in a sort of weird first world luxury way. The other thing I found really um, interesting and frustrating about all this speculation is like people are like going, "Oh, this is so boring. Why can't they do something interesting? Like it's just a new color." All that sort of stuff. What do you like? This is Rolex. This is what Rolex do. Like it's what they're famous for doing, and
Yeah.
it's what has made them into who they are today. Is like not doing crazy wacky stuff every other year.
Well, it's
Like
also it's like Rolex do what they want, not what
yeah,
you want. So really interesting. And the last point I think on this before we talk about what they actually have
mm,
done, I loved the sort of red herring of those
mm,
Instagram teasers of out of the blue, and again everyone just, oh
something is
my god,
coming. It's a
it's
no date sub.
it's
It's
a no date.
blue.
It's going to be a red sub. It's a dive watch. They've done this, and then I think the real out of the blue thing wasn't at all the new Submariner range. I think that was probably more expected than anything else. I think the real out of the
Yeah.
blue thing was the
Was that
new
rainbow
OPs,
explosion?
the Oyster Perpetual range of the sort of 28, 31, 34, 36,
Yeah,
41 millimeter
sure.
versions with the color bursts that hit. And I think we'll get into that in
Yeah.
a moment. But I love that. I love that it was sort of like sort of the little misdirection almost of the red herring. Like we'll throw this out there. We know what you guys are thinking. Yeah, you'll get that, but you'll also get three other sort of
Yeah.
reasonably
And
big
they must
updates.
know, like, they must sort of that must be like a deliberate marketing thing of like because I was genuinely surprised by
Yeah.
the OPs. We'll get to that. Anyway, so should we start talking about the watches now? What we're actually talking about?
Yes. Hit me with what's up first.
Well, let's sort of get the quicker ones out of the way first.
Happy to.
So there's some new date justs.
Yes.
Three new 31 millimeter Datejust, so women's watches for most people
Hmm.
in white roller saw. There's some new dial variations. There's some diamonds. Cool one with a purpley grapey sort of dial. That's very cool.
Yeah, with the
What do you think of
diamonds.
those ones?
Yeah, really interesting. I think my pick of those is the the 31 white gold with the diamonds, and
Yep.
that purple dial. Obviously, I think that's pretty
Yeah.
attractive.
And I think it's also, again, with all that sub stuff that we'll get to, it's easy to forget that, these smaller Datejusters are like Rolex's bread and butter.
Yeah,
Um,
like honestly, if I saw someone, someone wearing this, I'd be pretty into it. Like it's a really nice
yeah,
purple. Like
they're good looking watches.
yeah,
Do you
aubergine.
wanna know what's
Sorry,
next?
aubergine.
Aubergine, is
Yeah,
that what it's called?
yeah, aubergine.
This one was, so next up we've got Sky Dweller, and the big news here is that all variants, so Everose, yellow gold, black, white, brown, and champagne dials are all available on an Oyster Flex bracelet.
Yeah, so Everose and yellow gold,
Yes, yeah,
on
both
the Oyster
different.
Flex. So which is
Yeah,
the Rolex kind of high end rubber composite
yeah. So it's
strap.
yeah, it's a elastomer composite. It's got a blade of some sort of metal in there, so it's quite a it's not a rubber strap.
No,
It's a whole other thing.
it's next level.
Um, what do you think about this one?
Look, it's a big meaty watch. The Sky Dweller. It's a
Yeah,
hefty watch. I do like the idea of sort of this dressed down luxury. I think that this is Rolex, and these aren't cheap. These are like 50,000 Aussie dollars. So it's
on
not.
the Oyster.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
To me that makes me think about all those sort of chats we'd have with more of the fashion guys on the show,
Yeah,
and the trends towards more kind of that casual luxury. I see this as like
yeah,
you're wearing, like off white, and you're wearing like luxury athleisure wear,
yeah,
like and like top tier, like Stone Island, that sort of stuff. And this is like a watch you would wear with that. Like it's
yeah,
or on the flip side, it's like a golf watch or something. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
but to like I think the everyday punter, I don't know what like I don't know that this is like a watch that's going to be super appealing to those guys.
I don't know. For me, there's a few things I find interesting about it. I think it had to happen. Like it's that way, like a full metal bracelet or a leather strap. They serve quite different purposes. Like I don't think that Rolex has anything to lose by offering it on this. And for me, it really, if I think about who I imagine wearing it,
Yeah,
it's someone. It's you see those pics of like someone like Jay-Z on court side wearing a
yeah,
Yacht Master 2.
yeah.
Now I see that person wearing Sky Dweller on
It's
Oyster
ultra.
Flex.
It's sort of to me. It's like that ultra sort of luxury feeling to it, and
Yeah,
like
it's
cool, cool.
low key flex to the max. All
I
right.
but at the same time, I prefer it to the Yacht Masters.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, it's a cool watch. It's a very technical and it's a really impressive watch. And I think it's good to see it sort of find a new vibe, I suppose.
And if I had that sort of money and that sort of wrist size, I'd probably wear it. Like to be honest, it's up. It would fit up my alley. If I was
Sure.
that point in my life. Cool. Should we get into the new subs?
Yeah. Speaking of things up your alley, you're all over the old Submariners. What's
Yeah,
going on here?
typically. So I mean, the big thing is the sub is the slight, well, the size change. So it's 41 millimeter case, but
Yep.
it's got more refined, slimmer lugs. That's sort of the big thing about it. Earlier reports from people that have tried it on have said it kind of wears similar. I don't know how to feel about it because I've owned I own the Maxi sort of previous
Yeah.
generation sub now, and I felt that like that what the last thing that watch needed was to be bigger. So I find that
Yep.
really interesting. I mean, it's Rolex, so they've obviously put a lot of
Yeah.
thought into it, and maybe adding a millimeter to sort of the diameter points is kind of negated by the slimming of the lugs. Like if you're talking overall
Yeah.
volume of a watch, I'm really sort
From
of confused by the size
proportion.
change until I see it. I just can't.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd echo that. So I was like, oh, 41 millimeters, what's going on here? But then I saw the pictures and the lugs. I'm like, those lugs are, I'm there for them. Like I've been quite
Very
open
similar.
about not being a maxi lug fan.
Yeah.
And I think these look a lot nicer
Well,
to
I
my
love
eye.
my GMT Master, the sort of the current
Mm,
generation of it, the 126 710 BLNR, I think it is, off the top of my head.
sure.
But the back
Cool.
girl, as they call it, with the slimmer lugs, and that was sort of what really drew me into that. But it's still a 40 millimeter case, so I'm not. So if it's kind of a similar profile, whether it sits higher, I haven't seen anything about sort of the thickness.
Mm.
I think that's just one to try on.
Yeah, and they say they've changed the bracelet a bit. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it looks a
And
bit
like
bigger
it's
between the lugs, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I noticed, like, I think Hodinkee, that's sort of who I read once their site was back up. They were
Yeah.
saying it's broader. They use the word broader, I think,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
they didn't provide any updated measurements, which is, not entirely unsurprising. The other thing that we haven't talked about yet is entirely new movements. I think
Yeah.
the real winner. So they've got the new the Chrono G escapement and 70 ounce power reserve in the caliber 3235, which is
Hmm.
the date, which has shown up in other models, and the sort of new variant, the no date variant, is caliber 3230. I think
Same
that's what
power
this
reserve
watch
too.
needed.
70 hours. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was doing some research. So the no date, I think one of them hadn't been updated since 1988. That was when that
Yeah.
the outgoing no
Yeah.
date
They get
movement
they
was
get decades
introduced.
out of their movements. I mean, it's the same
Yeah,
because it's
well,
sort of the no date has always reflected the OP movement. It's been the same movement, and the
Uh,
date has always
might be
had
the other
the.
way around. Maybe it's forgive me if I've got the date, no date in 1988 wrong, was one of them.
It's pretty similar timing, but the no date is obviously matches the EOP cases, and
Yeah,
it's the same sort of movement, and then the date reflects the date just, and because as we've said, the OP and the date just are much bigger models, they tend to get that treatment first and that attention, and then
and then
it,
it all
it
goes down to the
sort of rolled out because
yeah.
in terms of like base calibers and that sort of thing, I don't think that they've got more than 4 or 5 movements. And that's the other thing that makes a lot of sense with these releases. And back to that earlier point of like, if they were going to do a movement update, then that
Mm,
impacts a lot of
everything.
watches, impacts everything.
So what about the new variants? What are we looking at?
Yeah. So there's the No Date Oyster Steel, which is the black dial, black bezel.
Yep,
Then there's everything else has the date. So you've got a date, which is the black dial, black bezel. You've
yep,
got a date with oyster steel and yellow gold, and that's blue dial, blue bezel, which is really really nice.
yep.
The the new Kermit, as they call it, the Kermit with a C, which is the date in oyster steel with a black dial green bezel.
Hot. And that's replaced the Hulk theoretically. That's the
Theoretically replace the Hulk.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
it's all it's bringing the Kermit back, and then there's the white gold, which has the black dial and the blue bezel. So those are
And
sort of the
that's
4 big changes.
and the blue bezel. There's never been a production Rolex with a blue bezel
Yeah, yeah,
before.
the Smurf. The Smurf. So the white gold had a blue dial.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
gosh, what a fool.
Which is it's
That combination, that black and blue, we haven't seen before, have we?
no, we haven't seen the black and blue. And
Yeah,
it's
cool. I think it
interesting.
looks great.
Obviously you would then call the yellow gold Submariners. So there's still the blue dial, blue bezel, black dial, black
Yep,
bezel,
yep.
and also a black bezel, black dial two tone as well. So oyster
Yes.
steel and
Yep,
yellow gold. So
yep.
in reality, that is six, eight
Cool.
new subs technically.
Sure.
Um, which is quite interesting. I mean, obviously, yeah, the talking points are they've gone for the contrasting of the black dial, the black dial green bezel on the new Hulk, and
Yeah. I prefer it. I prefer the black. I think it's a bit more understated, and
it
I think that
is
works on a white metal watch.
it is, and it gets me thinking. Now there's only the blue dial yellow gold and the blue dial two tone as the only coloured variations in this Submariner line.
Mm.
Is that something we're not going to see anymore? There used to be a lot more color. Are they moving the color to other parts of the
Well,
collection?
I think for like a bold precious metal, you can have that big bold dial as
I
well. But
think it
if
makes sense. I
yeah,
think that that's maybe that what they're kind of differentiating. They're sort of moving things out because yeah, I mean, across other lines, there used to be very colorful GMTs in precious metal, and obviously, I don't think I, okay. So my theory is that the professional models in steel are losing color dials. They're not going to do that
mm,
anymore, or that's a thing of the past.
okay.
But yeah, so bigger size, new movement, not much else to say really. Really,
Until we see him.
proportions is the big sort of question that comes with it. Really curious
Yep.
to see. I'm sure there are some people out there that kind of, like, oh, the Submariner's a bit too small for me, or the Sea Dweller or the Deep Sea was too big, and this is going to be something that is really appealing. I don't
Yeah,
think that
they're not doing it for no reason. That's what I would say.
they know more about it than I do.
Yeah, sure.
Which leads us to probably one of the more interesting kind of
Yeah,
sections of the release.
that Christmas morning moment for me was the Oyster Perpetuals,
Yeah, how you
and we
going?
get there's a heap of them. So they have off the top. Let's go through the sizing first. They've released
Mhm.
well, they've replaced, I guess, OPs in 28, 31, 34 millimeter, also 36. There's no more 39 millimeters, and now there's a 41 millimeter sizing.
Yeah.
So that's the sizing, and let's go through the colors that you can get on the 36. Like
Talk me
the
through them.
smaller ones, coral red, which is a really bright sort of, almost like a siren or fire engine looking red. Candy pink, which is what
Love
it
it.
says.
I love that.
Bright blue, which is that starbursty looking sort of quite classical blue dial.
Mhm.
Turquoise blue, which is it looks from the pixel like quite matte and very very turquoisey, as
Mhm.
you would say. Your favorite, green.
Is
Um,
it?
a really really bold yellow.
Mhm.
It's just like it looks like my Helios.
Ooh.
And there's a silver, which is very classical looking. It's sort of got gold applied battens and hand details. It looks quite classy. 41 mil. That's a 36.
Uh-huh.
41 millimeter has silver, yellow, green, turquoise, bright blue, coral, and black. No pink in the 41 millimeter, which I initially found disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with
How
you
do
on
you?
that.
What do you think about this? This was
Okay. So like we said earlier, I think this is the surprise. This is I don't think anyone was sort of expecting this.
yeah.
Um, I love the 36. I've sort of been kicking around the idea of an OP 36 for a little while in my head
Oh,
because it sort of feels like a perfect daily watch, sort of priced around,
yeah.
I think, just under 8,000 Aussie dollars. Uh,
And the other thing we should mention, Andy, is these have all got the 3230.
yes. Yep.
So this is no longer their entry level. Like it's their entry level pieces, but the
Yeah.
movements are like current generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Super accurate,
Upgraded,
70
70 up.
hours, really, which really again I think they were sort of looking a bit long in the tooth with that 42-hour power reserve in some against some of the competitors, but this puts them right back up there again.
Yeah, and it's sort of it in doing so it makes the entry level much, much more appealing. I think the OPs over the last couple of years have been quite strong anyway with sort of those white and
Yep,
black dials.
100%.
It's really cool to
Yep.
see this getting attention because they are simple, really, really well built watches. I love that it's sort of
Oh,
it's
the
fun.
white is the white out.
Yeah, it would be.
That 39. Oh, wow,
Well, I think all
interesting.
the 39s are out, right? It's the
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
just had I had a look earlier on Chrono 24 and it was like the whites were
yeah.
going for like 10 grand or
It's a
something.
silver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so it's those were going for like nearly kind of 40-50% over, which is crazy. But I
Crazy.
love I love that it's happened. I love that there's a Rolex style called Candy Pink. I love that.
Yeah.
I want the Candy Pink.
So there's two things that I find interesting about this, and everyone sort of picked up, I think, the reference to stellar dials, which were
Yes,
those sort of 70s, 80s, really bright, fun. Uh, you know,
enamel.
were they enamel dials? Yeah,
Yeah,
they were. And there's also the sort of the history of semi-precious stones. So I mean, Rolex has definitely had fun, colorful watch dials before. So maybe we shouldn't have been so surprised by this. The other thing that I think is, I'll say, is it's an interesting observation. A little while ago, Rolex bought a lawsuit against a aftermarket dial customizer called La Parisienne that
yes.
did a lot of repainted dials and had that really sort of, I'm going to say, a Californian
Mm.
vibe, like very fashiony, like a lot of like older models with bright bold dials. And I'll just say I think that court action, which I'm sure they would have done anyway, makes a lot of sense in the context of these releases.
Yeah, they actually ended up getting ordered, I think, to pay nearly $10 million or something.
Sure. I'm sure Rolex's lawyers don't mess around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Lesson learned. But
so yeah, and I think that the context of why they would want them not in the market by 1st of September 2020 is now very apparent.
it's no coincidence.
Mm.
And it just it's it's
So,
it's a reminder that the Rolex are thinking years and years and years in
oh
advance.
yeah,
And
of
nothing that
course.
happened today or this week w- wasn't
They
already
didn't.
going to
They didn't
happen
just. They didn't
6
just
months
go,
ago.
guys. Let's make a pink dial. That was a roadmap from however many years out. Which brings me to maybe the trickiest question of the day.
Mhm.
What's your, if you can, your call comes up and they say, look, Andy, your watch is here. What watch do you choose?
What do you think I'll choose?
No, look, I think you'll either go the pink 36 mil or you'll go a sub. But no, I reckon you'll go an OP.
Yeah, you're right. I genuinely leave the sub. I want a I'd go the 36 OP. I love the candy pink. I love the
Would you
turquoise
do it?
blue. I don't know, like I potentially the turquoise blue, but I think if I got the call for the green, I would take the green in 36.
So what's your first preference?
Green, green. But if
Okay,
if they said,
taking.
"Oh, we get the turquoise blue," I said, "Okay, all right, I'll do the." This is why I have it. I need to have a good reason to
Yeah,
own the
sure.
turquoise blue, but that's a good
Yeah,
enough reason. Oh, well, we've only
that
got
blue
that.
is lovely. I think that's probably one of
Blue
my
looks
favorites.
blue looks cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice. I don't. I need show. Let me try the sub on. Let me feel the 40. Let me feel the case.
Yeah.
Let me see if it wears the same as the 40 millimeter used to. I'm not interested in it. If it wears better, I am, and that's sort of my stance. But need to see it. What about you?
Yeah, so I was surprised. Like, I've never been a huge fan of subs in general. Like,
Hmm.
well, nothing against them, of course. It's just not, certainly the newer ones is, there's nothing that really does it for me. But the blue kind of got me pretty interested. But I think I've got to be a little bit realistic because I'm not going
Yeah.
to get a white gold sub anytime soon. Sadly, maybe
Buy some stickers, guys. You need to
yeah, a lot of stickers.
buy thousands of stickers.
The price
Thousands.
might have gone up. But I think I'm super, like, again, I love the pink, but really for me, it's that silver dial OP. It's just classic
It's
Rolex.
pretty. It
It's
looks pretty nice, especially with the indices sort of being a bit of a contrasting. Um,
Yeah, but not like as harsh as that black and white sort of.
yeah, yeah,
It's a
it's
little bit more
warmer.
elegant. I don't know. My only question is around size because I really like the 39 and I'm not sure about 41, so I'd have to try it on if I before deciding between 36 and 41.
Would you do the candy pink 36?
Yes, I'll be maybe tempted to go turquoise first. I really like
Yeah,
that blue.
I think that blue is going to be really interesting. I think it's.
Mm.
I think it's cool.
Well, we've got to chat to Jacobi,
Yeah,
so I think we should maybe stop talking about the
this
crown and
blew out.
start talking about headphones.
Yes, Felix, it is time to get Jacobi on the phone. Really great guy, founder of Iris Listenwell. This chat entails everything about sound, launching a business on a Kickstarter platform, Indiegogo, working with musicians and people from Queen and just a really interesting
It's a
bloke.
bit of a ride. It's like we said at the start. It goes some interesting places. So give it a listen and let's
Enjoy.
get him on the phone.
Yeah, let's do it, Felix. Cool. Felix, today's guest is Jacobi Anstruther, if I pronounce it right, the founder and CEO of Iris, who's going to talk to us about listening technology, launching headphones on Kickstarter, F1.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out I sort of went into this one going headphones are headphones are headphones, but I was very wrong. So let's find out just how wrong I was when we learn all about Iris Listenwell.
Jacobi, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to talk to you both about our little endeavor here. Iris has been the sort of brainchild of mine for the last 4 or 5 years. The company was officially founded in February 2018, and since then we've been taking on a number of challenges and really looking at audio differently to the rest of the market. To explain that a little bit, I think one really needs to understand that there's been a real decline in the quality of audio through the digital age, and it's one of the real things that suffered for sort of convenience over quality. And as Steve Jobs said, the sort of how do we get 10,000 songs in our pocket when he launched the first iPod, but um, that wonderful ease and convenience that we got through that has come in a degradation in the quality of audio that we've got used to, and our sort of internal bar and understanding of audio has become very used to this rather sort of flat and lifeless quality of audio. And so we see a number of companies out there really trying to innovate on top of innovation to solve this problem.
Hmm.
And Iris just try to look at that from a very different perspective. And rather than taking a sort of digital file that is missing the spatial components of listening to audio in a live environment and the active part the brain and your body plays in that listening process, and trying to recreate that through a digital process. What we've done is to really look at what happens in the brain and what happens in the body when we are in that live environment, and how do we recreate and enhance that. And that is where you'll see us talking about the concept of listening well, and the concept of the sort of mental wellness aspect of Iris, and how we look at that and how we engage the brain in what we call active listening.
Yeah, I think that's a really a fascinating side of it. So can you tell me for you guys, what is listening well? Is it sort of, maybe the listener's thinking you have to sort of be in a soundproofed room, very calm and focused on whatever's coming through your speakers or your headphones, or can you still have that same audio experience when you're, commuting to work or whatever you may be doing, going for a run?
Yeah, I mean, in any form of isolation, and I'd say that's from a pair of AirPods all the way to a studio speaker system in your car or in the Iris headphones themselves. What we focus on is, rather than what you're listening to, which there is a lot in the market of, and we're seeing a huge boom in the wellness space with companies like Intuition and Headspace and Calm, and what you listen to and how it can help your day-to-day mental well-being. Whereas Iris, we focus on how you engage with that audio. So to break that down a little bit without getting too technical, is when we listen to live music, if we were to all be sitting in an arena now, we're picking up what we call the real and the imaginary of sound. The real is what's coming directly from a player or an instrument to your ears. And the imaginary is all the other components. And that consists of the potential of the player and the instrument, the shape of the room, the space of the room, and where you are located within that room. So everybody in that room is having a different experience, really down to three reasons. First, the reason is the phase they're in, as in the position in the room that they are in, and therefore the information receiving is different. There may be a wall that close to them that is reflecting the audio directly to their ear. There may be a large cushion or a large man sitting next to them that's absorbing the sound. And what you're doing is you're receiving a lot of sound that is all the same frequency waves or the same group of frequency waves, but they're out of time. So our brain naturally works quite hard in doing a process called binaural phasing to make that make sense for you, put it all into a time so you can understand and experience it in your own unique way. Second reason we'd have a different audio experience is because that actual processing that's going on within the brain varies dramatically from person to person. And we can look at simple EEG and fMRI scans that show you that, the parts of my brain that might light up to a certain piece of music will be different to yours, and how your brain is processing that audio varies from person to person. And then the third reason we'd have a different experience is because of our emotional connection to what we're listening to, maybe the nurture point, you want to call it. So something that might make me rather sad and tearful might motivate you and make you happy, or you have your own preferences in music, and that all varies from person to person. So what happens when an artist and an engineer go into a recording studio to record a song is all that imaginary component, all that spatial information, all that phase information is missing in the recording, because it's generally going from a single microphone into a board. So the engineer will then try and recreate that space, or cheap parlor tricks to sort of falsely represent that space by using techniques like panning and reverb and echo. And then a processing company or a formatting company will do its own frequency manipulation. And then the DSP driver within your headphone or speaker system might do its own EQing. Each level of this process is to try and give you this sense of audio sounding more live, fuller, more space to it. But in each layer of this processing and in this new form of audio that has been plonked on you by an engineer or a series of engineers, what we call an artificial soundscape. And in listening to that artificial soundscape, our brains are actually very passive in the listening experience. And we're not doing that binaural phasing that we do a million times a second through our day-to-day life, whether it's me having a conversation with you or listening to a symphony in the Royal Albert Hall or whatever it may be. We're just listening to sound as someone else is intending us to listen to it, not as we would listen to it in real life. So what Iris does is gives you the information as if you were in almost infinite phase. So now imagine you're sitting in every seat in that arena simultaneously and getting that vast increase of information that the brain is then doing the processing itself, what we call active listening. And it's in that processing that we see some very, very interesting neurological reactions, which don't differ too far from what you see on an EEG machine of someone who is in a deep form of meditation. So synchronicity between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, an increase in alpha asymmetry, an increase in higher gamma power, and delta waves. We see a reduction in heart rate, an increase in heart rate variability, an improvement in heart rhythm. And it's all these different neurological and physiological changes that you get when you're listening to any music, spoken word, podcast, university lecture through Iris technology that we find really interesting. And that's what we call Listen Well. So we're early on in the study of what this means and what are the positive effects of it. The early results, we've worked with Goldsmith University, which is one of the head neuroscience divisions here in Europe, and they've done a black box study on the Iris technology in comparison to standard audio and have shown us the results I just showed you. And as we try and dive down into what those results mean in an increase of what we call as flow state. I don't know if you've come across the concept of flow state, but this segues quite well into our partnership with the Red Bull Formula One racing team, is when someone is in a state of flow, which is when we really are performing at our peak of our ability, whether that's an artist getting lost in a painting, a Formula One driver around the track and not really thinking about what he's doing, but just, as I say, in the peak of his ability, or a chef or a writer, or you and I in our day-to-day lives, even playing a game of tennis or cricket or whatever you're into. So we go into this state of flow, and the state of flow is a neurological reaction. And it's something that happens when we challenge ourselves just above the peak of our abilities. And therefore we're engaged and motivated to a state where we create this synchronicity between left and right hemisphere, and this idea of self and time almost dissipate away, so that we really are fully immersed in what we're doing and motivated by what we're doing. And the Iris headphone, by listening to music or a podcast, does that. So where we are taking our studies further is, how does that affect whether you listen to a university lecture, how motivated you are by it, how much more information you retain. When listening to music, you obviously have the benefit of this three-dimensional immersive audio experience, as if you were in this hyper live experience, and therefore it's a very natural, organic, 3D immersive experience to audio, even from a very poor quality audio file. And then into the wellness space as well, and how does this sort of meditative state of mind help you with the day-to-day stress. So we're launching a research program with Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, with 350 frontline workers who, for obvious reasons and the COVID pandemic we're going through at the moment, are under increasing stress. And how does 20 minutes a day of listening to Iris help them through that stress over a short period of time, and then a longer 3, 4, 5, 6 month period of time.
Interesting.
From what I understand, there's been a huge amount of work sort of coming up on 2 years from the launch of sort of the business to the point of this Kickstarter, which is a few weeks old, probably a month old by the time we get this episode out. It's gone really, really well, but I'd love to hear sort of what ingredients went into sort of building this business and then getting it ready for it's Indiegogo, isn't it? Indiegogo, sorry. why you chose that platform to launch it and sort of how you've managed to be so successful. Because I think the Indiegogo target was sort of around $100,000, and you've raised maybe more than 4 times that at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the latest figures are today, but it was about 450% over within the first 10 days.
That's
Of
crazy.
the 438% we are within 10 days,
Nice.
which is great. The reason for going onto that platform was we thought it was an interesting marketing platform to go live on. It's not a long-term thing. We will be moving to our own e-commerce pretty quickly. But we really wanted to bring this product to a totally new market and a unique market that was there and engaged in innovative new technologies to really test the support we could gain. And yeah, as you say, it's been a great success. I think we hit our target within 23 and a half hours of going live on the campaign, which was great. The process to get there was a much longer one. I mean, the technology itself that's bedded into the Iris headphones has been 25 years in the making. The scientists behind it have studied neurology, sensory input stimuli, and even the effects of psilocybin on the brain, which we're seeing a huge movement towards at the moment, and the positive effects of that on depression, PTSD, and other neurological issues. So that the software has been 25 years in the making. The building of the headphones has really been a very interesting journey. I met Neil, the designer, about 2.5 years ago, and one of the real challenges was him trying to hack my brain to create something that looked and felt as it does today, something that was not only modern but tilted its head to the wellness aspect,
Interesting.
and differently to the market, and was as aesthetically pleasing as the audio was. So that was the first challenge, was to get the design right, and I think we must have gone through thousands of different renditions of various early drawings and renders of the headphone before we started to get it right, and probably hours of sitting in a room together just talking about other products, other designs, other things that we felt had the essence of what we were trying to create. I think one of the interesting things we talked about was that movie I, Robot, with Will Smith, and how there was something about that sort of soft white outer shell with technology inside that was something we wanted to bring forward within the design as we started to home it in, while still tilting our head to some of the great luxury brands like Aston Martin and people who really spoke quality and premium, which was important. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was then, it was important for us to create a headphone that, even without the Iris software engaged, was the best in market. So that goes everything from the beryllium drivers that drive the audio inside, the zero latency Bluetooth chip from Qualcomm that's come in. So it's one of the first headphones to market that can be used for gaming and watching movies without latency. The battery life, I think the average product within our Bluetooth product within our sort of price range has a battery life of 20 to 24 hours with 30 to 37 hours. So really blowing that market out. The comfort, the ergonomics, the shape, the size, all of these things come into play. And then once you've got all of that right, then you go into your engineers in China and they tell you none of it's possible. Been created.
Well, it would be possible, but maybe for 5 times the price.
For 5 times the price, and you have to re-engineer everything. So then you start seeing, right, well, where can we make compromises on the design? And actually, thanks to an amazing team in China that we work with called PCH, we really made very little compromise. And I think we're really proud of what it looks like, not as well as
it looks amazing. Can I interrupt and ask you about the price just quickly? Because you mentioned the category that you're in, and I think that's really interesting because you've covered in a pretty robust description, the technology that's gone into this. You mentioned Neil, who's the founder of Discommon, which we'll link up, and hopefully we can get on to talk about his involvement. But if I convert this to Australian dollars, it's sort of around that 500 Aussie dollar mark. It's pretty reasonably well priced by the sounds of things, considering the amount of tech in there. So, is the plan for sort of post Indiegogo that there'll be like a massive price increase, or how do you see this product kind of evolving in the future?
Yeah, I mean, good question. For Indiegogo, the way you go about it is a discount on your retail price.
Sure.
Partly because retail takes a huge margin out of anything you're selling, and therefore there is a discount. But that said, it was important for us to keep it within the bounds. I mean, I think there was a lot of studies done internally about the pricing market. I don't know how this off the top of my head translates to Aussie dollars, but anything over £400 in the UK, the market decreases dramatically.
Okay.
So we wanted to keep it within that range. Yes, it is expensive, and it is a premium product, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's an affordable for everybody product. But as you said, there is a huge amount of technology into this, and it really does break the mold on a number of different stats that we've managed to achieve.
I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that sort of design process, because it sounds like you've got quite a laundry list of requirements that must have been challenging. How much of it sort of was driven by you and your vision and your needs, and how much of it was pushed from Neil Ferrier at Discommon? Was it a real sort of collaborative approach in terms of getting to this final point of a product?
Yeah, definitely a collaborative approach. I think when you talk to Neil, he'll allude to the fact that I am a complete perfectionist, and I drove him as hard as he drove me on this, and I think sometimes he wanted to absolutely murder me because I was a nightmare. I always remember a story. One of our strategy team in the company is a guy called James Vincent, and he was Steve Jobs' right-hand man for 15 years, launching the iPad, the iPhone, the iPod, iTunes.
Cool.
I mean, he was the sort of marketing strategy around all that. And he always told me,
right.
he told me a story I will always repeat to my team, that when they created the first iPhone, they built one prototype, and I think there was 40 or 50 Apple employees there, excited and nervous to present this to Steve for the first time. And Steve walked into the room, picked up the single prototype, walked over to the corner, dropped the prototype into a fish tank, and saw four bubbles of air come out of it. Turned around to the team, and as all their faces dropped, and the only prototype was now destroyed, and said, "If there's room for four bubbles of air in there, it's not small enough," and walked out.
Wow.
And having that level of attention to detail, maybe I can't claim myself, but definitely tried to live up to, and really tried not to compromise on what we wanted to bring to the market with the Iris headphone.
Yeah, right. That's hectic. I wonder what Neil will say as well. I'm sure it'll be. But
I watched a video. Didn't he say he did like 100 or something different designs? It was a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, I mean, we really did go through a lot of things.
it's a beautiful product, though, and I think all that hard work certainly paid off. One thing I just sort of like to revisit from your earlier chat about the technology and what you were saying, I was wondering if, say, if Andy and I and listen to the same song through Iris, do we hear it in different ways?
Yes, a very good question, and you will. And I've sat in a room with some of the best audio engineers around the planet, and they've given me completely different descriptions of what's happening to the audio. And it's a fascinating experience. That when I first took this project to Roger Taylor, who you mentioned earlier in our conversation, who came on as an investor, he said to me that that for him to get on board, really, Brian May being the astrophysicist or the real geek when it comes to audio and everything that he's achieved and the amazing mind that he is, and a guy called Josh McRae, who is their head engineer and was really since inception, of the Queen band. We'd have to hear it, and he wanted to get their opinion. So I went down to Roger's house, and it was actually at the same time as they were mixing the music for the film Bohemian Rhapsody. So Josh, who was doing that, was called by Roger and asked to get in a car from Twickenham, leave his very busy schedule and his baby that he was creating to come meet some guy who thought he was going to change audio. Josh turned up to the studio before Roger and Brian were there and was in, well, to put it nicely, a hell of a bad mood. And some guy was wasting his time where all he wanted to be was sitting in the studio in Twickenham, creating what was to become the great success that was Bohemian Rhapsody. So he grilled me for half an hour, and he knows more about audio than most people. And so I sort of battered away the questions as best as I could and fumbled about for a while. And then the Roger was to come into the room, and we tested every Queen song I think ever made, as well as some Rolling Stones songs. And the room was in silence while I sat there slightly nervously in the corner, at the end of which Josh turned around to me and said he could not explain how this technology was doing this to audio, but it hadn't sounded this good until they'd sat in the room and recorded it originally. And if Roger wasn't to invest, he was a madman. At which point he did invest and back the company, which was a really major milestone in the building of this business, because I think anybody looking to invest wanted to see that kind of support from, music royalty, who they are, Queen. And then, shortly after, I flew out to Nashville to meet with the executives of Concord, which is the biggest independent label in the world now.
Cool.
And they had a room of music producers in there to listen to the technology, who again came in with a cynical mind, but quickly was turned around, having listened to the audio, and said that, listening to songs that they had made themselves, and said it hadn't sounded that good since they recorded it. We then took it to Dean Street Studios, and the head there, a chap called Rob McFarlane, came in and cynically said, "This is silly." He has a song that he's listened to over about 4,000 times and uses for any audio soundscape, because there's a number of mistakes in the recording, like the moving of a chair, and he knows if he can hear that in a certain place in a certain way, then the quality of the sound he's listening to is good. And he turned around and said that he was hearing things in that recording that he hadn't even heard before in the 4,000 or 5,000 times he'd listened to it on the best sound systems around the world. So we really started to get momentum and support from these golden ears and from the industry to say this was really doing something quite special, and taking a poor low bitrate digital recording and giving it life like it hadn't really had before.
Fascinating.
That's really interesting. And look, as Felix said, we've run through one of our podcast episodes through, and sort of interesting earlier prepping for this call with you, I described it very differently to Felix, which sort of makes a little bit more sense. We were sort of, and it's that in itself, we were discovering new words to describe audio, but I love the idea of sort of that flow state and that focus, and I think that is something now more than ever could be really useful. You mentioned the partnership with Red Bull Racing and the Aston Martin team. Where does the technology fit into them? I don't imagine they're using these Flow headphones. So where is this sort of tech and algorithms coming in?
There's a number of places, and they're really exciting a partner for us, because there are so many reasons. I mean, just before I go into that, I think something you just said, which really is so important to us as a business, is what we decide, what this technology does, and what we decided to do as a business, and how we want to be perceived as a business, is really to look at you as the individual and empower the individual as your brain is far more amazing than anything else we can do and build in the world of technology. And that's really what Iris does, is it gives you the information so that your brain gives you the best experience and the most organic experience, rather than us trying to artificially create something for you. And I really think that's where we stand out and are unique as a technology. When it comes to Aston Martin Red Bull Racing, the first meeting I had with their executive team, had a CMO, Christian Horner, and all of these incredible successful individuals, as we were just early on as a startup and went to meet them, one of the comments they turned around to me and said we were solely limited by our own imagination. And that is the beauty of Red Bull as a company, I think, across all genres. But Red Bull, Aston Martin Red Bull Racing really probably is the pinnacle of that, and has been the success story of all the Red Bull Sport initiatives. So where we work with Red Bull at the moment, and where we will look forward to work with, are sort of two different things. At the moment, we run all their communications from driver to pit wall, from pit wall back to the factory in Milton Keynes. We work with the drivers in the simulators to induce flow state, to bring their brains into this more live environment in the driver training off the track, and then work with the drivers and the engineers as they live a very stressful, busy schedule. I mean, 22 races this year before, it was slightly affected by the COVID pandemic. I think Christian said to me that they were planning that their engineers would fly 3 or 4 times around the world within the first quarter of the season. So they really do have a stressful, packed schedule. So how do we help them recover post-race and focus before the race, and being immersed in whatever you want to listen to, engaged in it in this state of flow, really does allow your brain to relax and focus simultaneously. And that's what flow state is. It's that moment of being fully relaxed while fully focused.
Yeah, sort of a
sounds amazing.
Yeah, I guess I'd sort of you or I might call it being in the zone, which is a good place to be. So I did, I'm not in any way an expert in high end audio or sound engineering or anything like this, but I did a little bit of sort of digging around before getting you on the phone, and it seems like, as you've alluded to, a really interesting moment in this audio technology. There's a lot of stuff out there. Like, I sort of saw references to virtual surround sound, and like you were saying, sort of playing with reverb and filters. One thing I read a bit about, sort of in the context of Iris Listenwell, was I think Apple is coming up with spatial audio in the next version of iOS. Is that something that's on your radar, or is it a completely different category that you're not worried about? What's the impacts possibly of that?
I think what we've seen over the last 20 years is this 10 years, 15 years, is a huge amount of innovation in the visual space as iPhones, smartphones became bigger screens, tablets, TVs. Well, audio was somewhat neglected. And now, as audio becomes more and more of an important medium, and really the beauty of audio is we can stack it, and by stacking it, I mean we can listen to something and do something else. And as we live a faster and faster life, and the demands are heavier and heavier, audio really becomes more and more of a part to play. We've seen a huge boom in podcasts, in speech control for our technology, even into the wellness space and sound healing, and all the billion-dollar applications like Headspace and Calm, and audio really is coming to the forefront. So it is inevitable that as that becomes more important, that we need to fix this degradation of audio we've seen through the digital age. And there's a number of different technologies going about in a very different way. Spatial audio is a very interesting thing. There's a company called L Acoustic that's created a £400,000 island called the Lisa, which is a bed that takes a new recording of the track, runs it through a very clever algorithm, and then plays it out through a 38 speaker system. We're seeing different formats. Where Iris is unique and where we really differ is a number of things. One is it isn't a new format. Therefore, we're not asking the record labels at vast expense to reformat their back catalogs.
Right. Yeah.
Two, there is a genuine uplift in the quality that can be heard by the layman if you were just to use our application through a relatively cheap set of headphones. And that really is the really hard thing to achieve. There are different formats and some great companies out there like MQA who are trying to reprocess audio. But if you don't have a golden ear and you don't have £100,000 sound system, it's pretty hard to really understand and experience the difference in quality of audio. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is obviously what we've touched on, and us heroing you as the individual to create the soundscape yourself, rather than us doing the artificial processing, and how we put you at the center of it. And as you mentioned already, people do have a different experience from it, and the variations in articulation that I've heard over the years of building this business are fascinating.
Yeah, cool.
So yes, to answer your question, we keep an eye out on what's going on in the market.
Yeah,
of course,
I guess you've sort of, that's the thing I'm worried. Like, is what you offer like completely unique, or will everyone be doing it in a few years' time? And it sounds like that's not a risk for you, and that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, our technology is patented, as good as that can be. We hide the secret sauce as much as we can, but
Smart.
really looking at it from a perspective of neurology and perspective of mental wellness, I really think we're the only guys in them, or I'm the only people in the market I've seen that. And music is a space which is fascinating and interesting, but it fundamentally is subjective, and we all like listening to music in different ways and different types and different genres and etc. We at Iris aren't solely focused on music. We think this podcast edtech space is fascinating. If you are fundamentally more engaged in the music, if your brain is more active in the listening process, sorry, not in the music, in the spoken word you're listening to, how much more of the information do you retain? How much more motivated are you to return to it as an education platform? These are studies that we're going on after. Again, I've already mentioned the mental wellness space, the stress, the anxiety that we live in this fast, nervous planet that is only getting worse and worse as we are so stimulated constantly by so many different means. And we need to find ways to fully disconnect and have that moment to ourselves. So I think we're pretty unique in the fact that we're looking at the world through those lenses. The biggest form of flattery is imitation. I am sure that will happen at some point, but at the moment, I think we've got a bit of space and a bit of a head start in how we're going about this.
Really interesting. Felix and I both tested the app a couple of weeks ago, and it certainly is a different sound. And I was kind of, I was thinking to myself, have you made the original track sound worse so that it sounds so much better? But of course, no, you haven't. It's just sort of, but it was noticeably different. And again, we kind of had varying sort of takes on how it was different. So that's pretty cool. I think, when we look at the headphones and the money that you're sort of paying, and sort of these upsides that you're talking about, it sounds like the potential upside from them is really strong. And I'm kind of really fascinated to try and test a pair out and kind of hear for myself, because it sounds like the sort of thing that if it does what it says on the box is going to be amazing. So really cool to hear about that. Now I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, because we've talked sound, but you don't happen to be into watches at all, because we are a watch podcast, and I'd love to hear if that's at all of interest to you.
Hard pivot from ears to wrists.
It's a good question. I used to be. I got burnt a little bit.
Did you?
Well, I used to have a really wonderful watch collection that I was very proud of, that consisted of the really important piece to me was a limited edition Frank Muller, but there were some lovely other things in there once. And I actually had quite a large dinner party at my house once. And I woke up the next morning and the box was missing where I kept my watches.
No.
And I vowed to myself never to allow myself to become that emotionally attached to something. Or to a watch again, because it broke my heart.
That. Yeah,
I actually haven't worn a watch since.
Wow, I think that's the best answer to that question we've ever had.
There you go.
2 years ago now, I had about 15 pieces that I had collected over the years and really had a lot of love for, and it broke my heart. So
I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry to hear that. That's a horrible thing to have experienced.
And if you're listening, the evil house guests who took advantage of your hospitality,
No
it's not too late
headphones.
to return the pieces.
No headphones for you.
No,
Yeah.
or you're paying double.
At least, if not triple. Well, cool. What we like to wrap our chats with our guests on is recommendations. So we ask for, maybe what you're listening to, maybe what you're watching,
maybe not
maybe what
listening.
you're reading. Yeah, we probably Queen and the
Yeah,
cha-ching
well,
of the Indiegogo counter as it just blows up. But yeah, what's getting you through in your spare time?
I mean, my favorite album of all time, and probably has been for 10 years. Maybe I need to grow up and move on from it. But Paul Simon Graceland, I think it's one of the
Classic.
most spectacular start to finish albums ever made. So I always take a moment to listen to that. I produce music myself. I've
Oh, do you?
I own a record label.
Whoa.
I sort of come from a background of music. I've played around the world, electronic music in the biggest clubs and festivals and with the biggest names. It was sort of a hobby of mine that grew and got out of control for a period in my life. Residence in Ibiza, etc. So I love to sit down and actually I find it a very meditative process to sit down and make my own music. And actually, the book I'm loving at the moment is a book called The Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution. And it is all about the brain and how we improve our consciousness and bring ourselves into the present moment. As you can see with Iris, I'm very much down the rabbit hole of mental wellness, of the challenges that we all have day to day, and how we can help that. And so I tend to read a lot about that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's as good a place to close this as any. But I've got one more question for you. What should people do if they want to get a taste of what Iris Listenwell is all about? Maybe before they dive into their headphones.
Yeah, I mean, we have a beta app on the App Store for Android and iPhone. It was never our intention to become an app, but we wanted to give people a little tester. You can connect that to your. Sadly, it's there. There is a small number of playlists in there we put in there, but sadly, it's really just been we've used the API of Spotify Premium. So if you're a Spotify user, you can download the app, connect it to Iris, and toggle on and off and understand the difference of what you were listening to before and how you listen to Iris. And I think, really the response we get and what you'll find is there is an instant change in audio that you experience. But where I find it really interesting and a lot of the anecdotal feedback we get, and actually a lot of what our studies with Mount Sinai around is the more you listen to it, how it begins to have more of an emotional impact on you. And you can listen to songs that you've heard numerous times and suddenly there'll be a higher emotional response to it, whether that's hairs on the back of your neck or people, calling me up saying they'd cried listening to Tosca for the first time or whatever it may be. And really, I think the ear is an interesting instrument and it's an interesting part and what you experience and understand, somewhat like HD TV. Before it came along, watching a ball game, we were perfectly happy watching it on a normal TV. Now we go back, we can't even see the ball and we need to watch the sport in HD. It's very similar experience. When you listen to Iris, it's when you turn it off again that suddenly that sound just feels rather flat and lifeless, and you've somewhat raised your internal bar. So, yeah, I'd say go try out the app if you like the app, and you want to listen to everything through it, whether it's your podcasts, and really engage with what you're listening to. I mean, podcast is an interesting space as a medium. The stats are that we were meant to retain below 17% of the information in 2 weeks and almost nothing in 6 months. We all think we're doing something good by listening to a podcast and educating ourselves, but unless we actually talk about it straight afterwards and then embed it into our memory deeper, then it actually is just sort of literally in one ear and out the other. So engaging with all forms of we listen to 4.5 hours of digital audio a day, and Iris headphones will allow you to do that with everything you're listening to and really immerse yourself in it and better yourself as a consequence.
Well, that sounds great. And I think
You've sold me.
Yeah, certainly. I hope everyone immediately after listening to this is going to talk about it to their friends and family and, people on the street. So thank you again so much for your time. I know it's a bit earlier in the day over there, so we really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy, actively live Indiegogo to, to chat to us. It's been a real treat, and, we'll link everything up in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time. And I think we'll...
Yeah, Felix, Andy, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on. Real pleasure. I hope you have a lovely evening down there, and we'll connect soon, I hope.
Felix, awesome to chat to Jacobi. Like we said, sure. Great talk. This has been a banger of an episode.
It's a bit of a bumper episode. I reckon this is going to bust the time limits out.
Yeah, going to break the internet. I think, guys, we hope you've made it this far and enjoy it. And just to remember, support us by supporting our sponsors. Buy some OT stickers. Get them just in time for commuting and work Christmas. And laptops and Christmas. No, we're pretty quick with shipping. People have already started tagging us on Instagram. As always, thank you to our producer, Major Tom Media. We love your work, and sorry for this last minute edit.
Sure, but good question. And of course, you can follow Iris Listenwell on Instagram. Yes. Iris Listenwell.
Yep.
You can follow us ot.podcast. You can send us an email otpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, everything's on our website otpodcast.com.au. We will see you guys next week for another great episode.
Pew pew pew.
Bang.